Welcome back to the Last Choice TV reviews, the ranked Last Choice TV reviews.
Yeah,
for the first time ever.
Yeah, we made it.
Cracked the top 300 of iTunes. So
Not bad.
Not sure what we have on Spotify. I don't know what that looks like or how to even tell, but thank you for everybody that's listening and downloading the podcast or streaming the podcast, because it's obviously someone out there is listening to the point to where we're actually getting ranked on the iTunes list. So
thank you.
And continue to leave comments and rate. That helps rankings as well. So if you are watching, don't forget to leave a comment or rank the show. So here at the Last Choice TV reviews, we are taking a look at House of the Dragon. And this episode is episode 4, named King of the Narrow Sea. And James, we're just gonna kind of start with overall thoughts and feelings on this episode.
I thought it was a crazy episode, but I really liked it. I think it set a tone, and I think it changed some of our characters. We see some issues kind of get wrapped up. Some people we didn't like, some people that we liked. You see a little bit of resolution. What I thought was interesting, there's a lot of things that the first 3 episodes dangle in front of you, where a lot of TV shows, and we'll get into it as we go through the episode, and I'll bring them up, but a lot of TV shows will kind of dangle that fruit or that idea in front of the audience and drag it out for 2 or 3 seasons. And they didn't do that. Like, a lot of things that have been dangled for 3 episodes happen in this episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was an overall interesting episode. I still don't know how I feel about it. I watched it last night and I'm still not 100% sure. This is one of those ones where I definitely need to go back and watch it again, because I feel like I probably missed something or missed some kind of banter that I needed to hear to try to understand it. I think the coming of age story from these characters and these girls that we were watching in the beginning are they went and made a case for they are no longer girls, they are women. And we are going to accept the ways of the land here that we kind of got in Game of Thrones with the keeping of family lines together and things like that, to where we're just kind of supposed to just kind of throw that away and accept it for what it is, which I think is sometimes difficult. But here you kind of have to throw away your
personal morals
or preconception to what is right in your mind, and accept it for, this is the time period, this is the show, this is how they've done things for this. So with that being said, I overall understood why we had this episode, but I don't think it's been the strongest episode as a whole until we probably get to later episodes. I don't think this is going to stand out like right now with 4 episodes as like, oh, this is the one that was amazing. But this is going to be the one, I agree with you there, that's going to set the theme for later episodes to come.
Yeah.
So it's that theme setting and kind of character plot line finish. Like, here's where we're at. This is who they are. We assume something about them, and now we have confirmed that assumption, and
Correct.
It's time to move forward in the story. And considering moving forward in the story, I don't think we got a terrible time jump here. I think we went ahead a couple of months.
Yeah, it wasn't like a massive jump like it had been doing.
No, so I think it was like 4 or 5 months that you get this jump here, and I'll explain kind of as we get into the scenes like why I feel it was probably 4 or 5 months, but it could have been less than that. There was no significant feel to the time jump here as we have gotten in, the last episode where a baby was born and he was 2 years old or 3 years old at the second name day, so 2 years old all of a sudden. So we start out this episode Again, title scene. I'm not going to go analyze it. There's other people out there that are better at analyzing title scenes than me. So please go watch their videos on that. But it's still super cool. I still love the scene in it. And at least we had one this episode. But it doesn't seem to be morphing the way that the Game of Thrones ones were. It seems to be pretty static, and I could be completely wrong there.
Well, you got to remember at the beginning of Game of Thrones, they were pretty static, but towards the end, as they were wrapping it up, we were used to it changing every week.
That's true. So we start with Princess Rhaenyra sitting in some, like, I don't know where. Do you know where?
I think
this
must be Dragonstone, I would imagine.
Dragonstone? Do you think they're at?
Because that's where she
here?
goes,
Okay.
right, to prepare.
That is her like place.
So I would imagine. I would imagine it's Dragonstone.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't really tell, but she's here, basically taking on suitors that are trying to woo her in this professional capacity that they do things here. I
This
don't really
courtship,
know how to
yeah, that
courtship.
her obviously the king had set up. So all these
Yeah.
different knights and different families and houses are coming to basically give her the reason of why she should pick them to be there, to be, married.
Yeah, and in true Rhaenyra fashion, and it's interesting because, like, I guess her father basically tells her in the last episode, like, hey, you can pick who you want, but then he sets up this stuff for her.
But
and,
you and I as the viewer, we know pick what you want means yes, pick what you want, but I'm going to send the people
Yeah.
to you. You can pick out of those people.
I'm gonna set this up. So
Yeah.
we have her super uninterested. Like if you just her mannerisms of playing with her necklace, playing with her ring, she's not really paying attention. She's being typical Rhaenyra here, and we have this gentleman that is well into his senior compared to her.
Yeah.
Kind of just talking to her about how great his house is and how he has a dry moat and there's a lot of stuff and things. And I'm just going to leave it at that to not go through all of it. And Rhaenyra asked him an interesting question about how did he think her grandmother was attractive?
Yeah.
I believe that she asked. And he goes, that was nearly half a century ago. And she's like, yes, it was. Just to show how old this guy was compared to her. And did you know who was the guy sitting next to her in this episode, like kind of helping her out through all this? I don't think we got his name.
I mean, isn't that one of the? I guess I kind of lost that. He's not on the council.
He's not on the council, so I think he's just traveling with her to help her out here, an advisor. So the first suitor is super old, and she kind of just dismisses him as being old. The second one is a child.
Which makes me laugh how appalled that she is at this young kid, because compared to what her father was just going through a couple episodes ago when the sea snake wanted him to marry their daughter, this kid is older than that girl. So yeah. I would argue she's being portrayed as this 17, 18-year-old at this point. He looks like he's 14 or 15. So in my opinion, I was like, it's not as absurd as she's trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, and I feel bad for this kid because he's up here, obviously, like nervous as hell. Probably not doing this because he wants to. You know, he's there because someone probably told him to come, and everyone wants their seat in line to the throne, so he's told to come. And he basically tells her, "You'll be protected by me." And Bracken, one of the guys off to the side, basically says, "She has a dragon, you dumb cunt." Like, what does she need your protection for? And Rhaenyra thought that was kind of funny. But this kid, I give him credit, man. He's got some balls. He pulls out his sword, and they're about to fight right in the middle of this.
This
Rhaenyra's
kid,
basically like, I'm out.
This guy like just rips on him the whole time, like he's nobody. And they decide to fight. And as they're walking away, I thought to myself, are they about to like actually fight to the death, or are they just going to clank swords a little bit? And then as she's walking away with Ser Criston Cole, you hear the blade go into somebody. And I was like, oh, that kid just got beat down. But no, that's not what happened.
No, this kid stabs this dude that was giving him right in the chest or stomach area. And
Yeah, he's done.
just drops him, like just kills him right in the middle. And I mean, I guess if we didn't need to set the brutality of this time period, we got it again, because here they are trying to court the princess, and you know what? We're just gonna pull out swords and see whose is longer. Then obviously the young kid won this battle.
And then everyone's like, well, okay.
Yeah,
like there's no
one
like
cared
punishment to him.
I mean, I did. Ser Criston Cole was nice about it, and it was like, don't look, princess. Like he kind of covered her from seeing the guy get stabbed and killed. But I mean, again, it's Game of Thrones, so that guy obviously is not going to court the princess anymore since he's no longer exists. We move.
So
from there.
now I do want to point out. I don't know exactly where the guy falls in line, but I do believe the guy you asked sitting next to her on the throne, not Criston Cole, but I do believe the guy sitting next to her is Stark.
That could be,
because he does have the crest of the. So I believe it's the Stark saw pledging.
It's a stag, so I think it's
the
a Baratheon.
Oh,
It's
the
a
stag.
Baratheon.
Okay, so it's
Stark is a
Baratheon.
wolf.
That's right. You're
Yeah,
right.
so I think it's
yeah.
one of the Baratheons that.
So it is
there.
it is a Baratheon. Well, it must be if
Yeah.
they're wearing that crest. So I would assume it's the Baratheon that pledges, bends the knee to her at the end of the first or second episode, whatever it was that he names her heir.
Probably, and that's why I'm like not 100% sure where she is, because she may not be at Dragonstone since he's there with her. Like they could be around his realm or something at that point, but who knows? She could still be at Dragonstone. And he's just helping, being there anyway. So we move forward, and we have Rhaenyra basically on her ship, sailing back to the Red Keep. So King's Landing, and everyone gets really concerned. They're hearing stuff flying over. So there's some kind of dragon over top, and here comes Daemon swooping in over the top and basically like almost takes this ship out with how close he gets to it, throwing Rhaenyra to the side and smashing her head into the side of the boat. With how close Daemon is flying in. So I don't really know who was in control of that, but Daemon did a nice little Top Gun flyby for this ship, and Rhaenyra seems happy that her uncle is coming back from the Stepstones, where he had just won the crab feeder war, I guess you could say, with him and Corlys. So he's coming back, which when I saw that happen, the first thing I thought was like, oh, I don't know if your brother's going to be happy to see you. Like, he didn't really tell you, he banished you and you didn't listen to him and started a war, and now you're coming back. So we move from that scene and we get basically a gathering of, I would say, everyone that's around the castle keep that's supposed to be here, because people are very shocked that Daemon is here. You get like whispers from the crowds, and they're all congregating in the throne room to see what Daemon has to say to the king. So they're getting the king's crown on and getting him up near, and I thought this was an interesting thing, near the Iron Throne, but he wasn't sitting on it. He was kind of just standing in front of it. So there was definitely I don't think he really likes sitting on that throne because of how much it does punish him over the course of time. So Daemon comes in, and the King's Guard basically holds a sword to his chest. And you kind of texted me this last night. Daemon has a very good line here. And I'll give it to you because it seemed like you very much enjoyed this.
He takes a sword, kind of turns it around towards the king, and chucks it to the ground and says,
It wasn't a sword. It was the hammer.
The hammer,
that
yeah.
the crab feeder was using to nail the spikes in.
Yeah, so
he
turns it around and says, add it to the throne, as he tosses it to the floor.
So the interesting thing here, and then they have this little conversation of Daemon walks in, and at first I thought it was his hair that was like braided up.
Oh,
in this
really?
crown.
No, I could tell he had the crab feeder crown thing.
Yeah, but then
on.
he's wearing the crab feeder crown, and he had cut his hair. So like that was really surprising because most Targaryens have the long blonde hair. That's one of the signs of them. They all have it. So Daemon has cut his hair, and the king mentions like, "Hey, you wear a crown," and I think he was expecting his brother to come back. And what I was expecting his brother to come back more forceful of trying to take the crown and say, "Hey, I run this." But he basically kneels to Viserys and says, "Hey, the Stepstones and all of this area, it's yours. Like they kinged me, king of the Narrow Sea, but I'm giving it to you."
Yeah, he does the classic. I know there's only one true king. Yada yada yada. But the king does immediately ask about someone.
Yeah, so he asks about Corlys because Corlys did not come back, and Daemon tells him, he sailed back to his hometown, and Corlys is not having it with this king. He's not coming back to do basically what Daemon did and say, "Hey, this is yours. I'm not taking it." Corlys is I think still standing strong on being pissed at the king for not, and we're going back 3 years, 4 years now, of not marrying Lyanna and shoring up the lines. So I think he's very upset with that. And then the king and his brother have an embrace. I don't know if the king here truly believes his brother 100%, but I think he wants to. And it does go back to this point of where, as much as you can F up over and over again, we are Targaryens, we are brothers, and I do love you. So he's taking his brother back.
Yeah. No, I do. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I do want to point out that in all these scenes that we're talking about, the hand of the king is always kind of lurking off to the side, and the king is always glancing over to him as if to get approval. And that's a little bit of foreshadowing to come in this episode.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's approval or if it's just, but they're always showing, that the hand of the king and making sure that we notice that he's kind of lurking
him
there.
And Otto's relationship in where we keep looking back over, and I agree that the king is looking for some kind of acknowledgement from Otto of like, and it's almost like the king looking at him like, "See, my brother came back. Like you talk bad about him, but see what he's doing here."
Yeah.
And Otto's not having it. Like Otto's not stupid, and neither is Daemon, but the king is. The king can be used. Being a king is not his strong point. And we've seen that from just some of the decisions that he's been coerced into making, not necessarily made because it was his decision. So him and his brother have an embrace. They move on. Then we're out. It's like and this is so Westeros. We have this super intense scene between him and his brother where you're kind of like, okay, are we going to have someone get killed here? Is somebody going to do this? And we move right into wine and happiness and everybody talking and everyone loves each other again. And it's just so Westeros, let's just throw it behind us. And again, I think that like defines this king so well of like, here's my 3 minutes of being serious and not quite sure what to do, and then let's go back to drinking wine and being happy and act like everything is perfect and not deal with the issues that we really have of, you created a mutiny, you went against me, and you started a war that I didn't want. Like, we're gonna just forget about all those things. So now we're in a courtyard where Viserys and his brother are talking about their mother, saying that Viserys, that Daemon was always the favorite. Alicent is standing there. And then I wanted to point this out. You kind of already pointed out, but there's just Otto again lurking in the corner, just staring with this pouty death look stare. Like, I don't know what else to say, while he's watching everything. This guy is a stalker at the end of the day on what this crown is doing and how much he is looking over top of what's going on. And I think that that's gonna mean something later. But so then they have this like weird Rhaenyra comes up, and you can tell that so one of the things that we didn't say on the ship was she was talking to Ser Criston Cole on the ship in the episode where Daemon flies over, about how she ended this tour of suitors abruptly by turning all of them down, and she ended it 2 months early.
Yeah.
So the king's not happy that Rhaenyra is back here. So you have serious tension between him and her, and obviously this is like the first time where I'm like, okay, I can see why the king is upset with her and hasn't talked to her yet, because obviously his brother just showed up and he had like better business to deal with in his brother before he talked to Rhaenyra about ending this tour early. But there's definite tension between the two. And, you know, she has like, congratulations on your victory. And her dad just kind of gives her that cold dad stare. I do want to point out too, they didn't mess this scene up. I don't know if you noticed it in the last episode. Viserys is supposed to be having two of his fingers cut off from that issue. And in the last episode, there was some green screen left on his black gloves that you saw, and it looks like they cleaned that up on this one. I also want to make one point out that I got wrong last week. That was not Daemon's dragon that burned the crab feeder. That was a new dragon from the Laenor Velaryon, who has Targaryen blood, called Sea Smoke. I was just so happy to see a dragon. I just assumed that it was Daemon's at that point.
And that's why I told you, I think there are a lot of dragons. We're just not seeing them all.
Yeah, but so we are now found out we do definitely have another dragon involved in this, and it's not owned by the king. Like, the king does not have control of this dragon.
Yeah. And they have a lot of dragons,
which I think then constitutes how dangerous Corlys could be with having a dragon.
Correct, yeah.
Anyway, we continue with this just kind of weird embrace with the king, and then Alicent, being Alicent, just tries to, you know, cool the tension here, and is like, wouldn't your brother like to see the new tapestries?
Which in my mind, I was like, what is happening here? Which is funny, because they immediately go in, and the king, it's almost like he has the same thought as me. No, of course my brother doesn't want to see the tapestries. He's about sex and wine and drugs, and
yeah,
you don't care about looking at something.
So then Rhaenyra, and it's all, and you know, being her friend, and I think you're starting to get their friendship back, was like, I would like to see the tapestries, but I'm going to enjoy them alone. And she kind of walks away from the group, and she's sitting on a bench, and Alicent comes over to her, and not getting into like the terrible details of everything that they're talking about in this little banter here, but it seems like their friendship is coming back.
Well, they admit that they both have missed each other.
They both have missed each other, and then
I want to break it down a little bit. Can I talk a little bit about what I got out of this?
Sure.
So I think it's funny that obviously the princess is kind of pouting. She wasn't excited about the tour. Alicent asked her about the tour, seeing all these guys, and she's like, "Yeah, whatever. It sucked, basically." And Alicent kind of makes a joke,
not swooning over.
And
swooning over.
Well, because Alicent jokes and says, "Oh, it must be really tough to have all these young knights and all these fawning over you." And she's like, "Well, they're not fawning over me. They're fawning over my place and their chance to be on the throne and all these different things." And she says, I'm just like, basically she talks about how she would be in a prison just to be giving birth. And Alicent basically says, yeah, in a roundabout way, it's kind of like she's looking at the princess now and says, yeah, I could only imagine what that must be like. And it's like, all of a sudden Rhaenyra is like, oh shit, that's really what you're going through.
Yeah, so
it's like all of a sudden Rhaenyra realizes that her being married to her father is not necessarily her ideal way of life, and she's not enjoying it, and she is just feels like no one sees her as Alicent anymore. She's just the queen to produce heirs.
Yeah, and that you know, that's a key here, and I think it solidifies their relationship back to each other, and they both realize that they are in kind of the same situation. Alicent's was just expedited, and she had no choice. And Rhaenyra has to realize that she does have a better situation right now than Alicent does. And the fact that she even gets a choice in the matter, where Alicent was basically just sold off to the king through her father and his games that he is playing. After that, we get a cut over to Daemon, who is in the Godswood. Rhaenyra comes over, and they basically have some banter. This was one where they kept going back between High Valyrian and speaking common tongue. So I was trying to track the whole time back and forth. But really, in this scene, it was just kind of them saying how bad they had it to each other. Almost, where she's complaining about how she's going to get married off, and that, if she was a man, she could have as many bastards and no one would care. And Daemon's like, well, I still can't get rid of my wife. Like, it's not just the females here that have an issue. I have an issue. I had to marry for the same reason. And, I can't get rid of my own wife here. And Rhaenyra is saying that she thinks some of these adventures had changed Daemon. And I think that's the key of everyone thinking Daemon has changed in this episode early, and he came back more mature, with his new haircut, kneeling to the king, and basically having a very mature conversation with Rhaenyra on trying to explain to her how this is the game. Marriage is a political agreement. It's not something you get to choose. Even if you're a man, you don't necessarily get to choose this when you're in royalty at this point. Yeah. Did you get anything else from that? I mean, that kind of...
No, they just kind of go back and forth. It's almost like they're trying to one up each other on who has it worse.
Yeah.
And Daemon's trying to convince her, you have all this power. You can do whatever you want, even if you do get married. And she's like, no, because I'm a woman.
And he's like, yeah, I can't get rid of
Which, again, is a little bit of foreshadowing to the end of this episode.
Yeah. So we come back to the small council. Interesting thing here.
No longer a cupbearer.
And sitting next to Otto. So she's no longer the cupbearer, sitting next to Otto. And they're discussing Corlys. Because Corlys didn't come back. And basically they're talking here on how he has hurt pride. And Otto tells the king that he gets word from Old Town, which I believe is his home, where they come from, that Corlys is talking to the free cities in negotiations to marry Lyanna to Bravos, basically, and start in an agreement with them, which is not a good thing for the realm. Not a good thing at all. This could definitely bring on a war between Westeros and the free cities. And Otto, being Otto, kind of just looks over and like, if they have a marriage pact, we must have our own marriage pact, and turns and looks directly at Rhaenyra when he says that. So foreshadowing more and going back to the conversation that they had basically in the last episode, of this being the way to shore up the kingdom again and be powerful and bring the dragons into play that they have. There needs to be some form of marriage between the sea snake and the Targaryens. They have to have.
And I find it funny because the king is just beside himself. That he's like, "What are you? This has been like 3 years. This Corlys is still upset that I didn't marry his daughter. Like, good lord, get over it, man. Like, the king just does not. He just can't understand why this guy can't move on. And they're trying to say, the sea snake, Corlys is a proud man, and he feels betrayed. Like, you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, so from there we cut to kind of the scene with Alicent holding her baby that's crying. There's nothing here, but I wanted to point this out because I think it goes back to the conversation that her and Rhaenyra had earlier of her feeling trapped and is just there to air children. And then here she is in this keep and she can't go out. She can't go anywhere. She's the queen. She's here to produce heirs. And we know the last queen was basically required to produce heirs until it killed her.
Yeah.
Now, luckily for her, she popped out a boy pretty quick, but then she had another one right after. So, you know, when's the next one coming here? Because this just seems like that's.
Well, I mean, there's no
Sarah's
protection
thing.
back in the days
Exactly.
either. So,
well, I mean, yeah, but still, it's just like you're just waiting for the next child, and that's really what she is there, taking care of this child and just waiting to bear another. That's all she has, and I think that's what that. The reason why we had that scene was to kind of solidify that point. Then we move to Rhaenyra walking into her chambers. Ser Criston Cole's outside of her chamber. She says goodnight to him. And like, does this guy get to sleep?
I don't know.
Like he's standing watch outside of her door. He's with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, when does this guy take a nap? Because it just feels like he is never off duty, which he really isn't. But at some point, he's got to go to sleep, man. Poor Criston Cole here. I don't know if I would like want this job with how much he's got to deal with. And then so Rhaenyra goes into her chambers, and it feels like she's unpacking her clothes that she had on this trip, or some kind of, or not necessarily clothes, but someone left
some sort of knapsack or something there.
Yeah, a bag in her room. So she empties it. It has basically commoner clothes on and a note with a map on it of how to get out of her room.
Yeah, there's a hidden door that she didn't know was there.
Now, it's interesting that she didn't know it was there, because that is like key in Game of Thrones, that all of these royalty rooms have a hidden door in them for them to escape if the kingdom is sacked. But I guess you don't tell your 15-year-old, 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah, exactly. She probably just hasn't got to the point where she does learn that they're there.
Yeah, so she finds out. And the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, this isn't a good idea. Like, this is not a good idea. I'm in my mind, I'm like, Otto is planning something. There's going to be like an assassin at the end of this tunnel. And with how like crazy it went, and she won't take an heir, I'm like, Otto's taking it into his own hands. But come to find out, she gets to the end, and it basically takes them down into the dragon pit. And she passes the altar of the one dragon, and it's Daemon that has shown her this, and he is taking her out of the keep and into, or outside the walls and into the common world with all the commoners to show her and let her have some fun in the world. So,
and I said this last night to you when I text you, it's very Princess Jasmine escapes the kingdom. Jasmine leaves the castle, and she wants to see what the real and what I thought, and the reason that came to my mind is because just as Jasmine goes out into the world of Aladdin, obviously a lot more, well, we're kids, so it seems like it's safer, but just the bewilderment of like, oh wow, this is like really what it's like outside of the kingdom. I had no idea. Rhaenyra has the same reactions of like, what are these people doing? Like,
yeah, she has been outside the
no
wall.
clue that this is how life is for people.
No.
And she's fascinated, scared, and excited all at the same time.
And, you know, we see, you know, people having sex in the middle of the street. One guy's getting robbed. You've got like magicians that are out there. You've got the lady with no eyes telling everybody their futures and how they're going to die and all this stuff. And she is just just bewildered by it all and so fascinated.
Yeah. Then he takes her to a
She's
play.
just never had it. Then he takes her to a play, but there's a scene in between before he takes her to the play of the king is not doing too well, where he's got his maids really like scrubbing what I'm guessing is like dead skin off of the king's arms from his just now his whole arm seems to be going necrotic from where it was just his fingers. And it's obviously hurting him. And as much as Alicent is, talking about how trapped she is, I think she does feel for the king and has some feelings towards him, because she takes the like scrub brush that they're using from them, tells them all to leave, and she continues to basically bathe the king and remove all of this necrotic flesh. You can't really see it in the episode, but I'm assuming like cleaning his wounds.
Yeah.
And he says, you have a much gentler touch than the other ones and a much kinder touch. And she continues to do that. And, Alicent playing her part, like she continues to play her part, through this whole thing. Then we get to the play. So what are they doing in the play? Like, what's the play all about? Why is this significant?
They're making fun. I mean, it's just like you see in typical fashion. They're making fun of the kingdom and the crown, and they've got they open it up and it's like the king names his daughter to be the heir, but then all of a sudden a son is born, and it's kind of like they're going back and forth on which one should be the rightful heir. And they make fun of, if Rhaenyra were the heir, the kingdom would fall, and no one would, and they ask the crowd, would you want her to be heir? And they're all like, boo, and no, which kind of pisses Rhaenyra off. And Daemon's like, listen, this is, everyone has the same mentality. The thought of a woman being on the Iron Throne just does not comprehend to them, because you even see women booing the idea. And Rhaenyra basically says they won't have a choice. And Daemon's like, no, you keep saying they're not going to have a choice, but they're going to have a choice, because you can't rule over people that don't want to be ruled.
Yeah. And this is almost like, it was kind of interesting here, because I didn't at this point, you don't really understand Daemon's motives for taking Rhaenyra out. And when we got here, I kind of started to feel like his motives were pure, and he wanted her to understand what this world is really like and how the people really feel, and give her an idea of, if you decide to continue to move this way and you want to stay heir and you have this anger inside of you about it all, you're going to need to understand you're going to have to win the people. They're not going to just accept you. I think he really wanted her to understand that they were not going to accept her as she was. And then they have this, she walks away because she's getting kind of upset of watching it. Then they have kind of fun with her, like taking something from a street vendor, but not knowing she needs to pay for it. But I think she kind of did know, and they play this game of like, oh, I'll get her, don't worry about it, to kind of save her from this guy being real pissed that she's stealing his food at that point. So interesting way to end it there. Then we kind of move back to Alicent again.
I do want to throw in the fact that as she's running away, she runs into that knight. Are you getting to that a little bit later?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, gotcha. Go ahead.
That didn't happen. Yeah, okay. That didn't happen yet. So when she runs off, Daemon runs after her. We cut back to Alicent in her chambers at night, and she is what seems to be just all by herself in her room, drinking her sorrows away. She's having wine very late, and she just kind of blows the candle out again, really shadowing that she's trapped here. She has nowhere to go. We really keep hitting on that. We go back to Rhaenyra running through, and she runs into one of the Sir Harwin, one of the guards, that stops her like she's, what are you running from? Because obviously if you're running like this, you've stolen something, you common rat. Like, am I going to need to arrest you? And she's like, Sir Harwin. And he's like, the princess. So he recognizes her real quick and then sees Daemon come around the corner. And Rhaenyra's like, don't. Like, don't do anything about this. Act like you don't know me. Act like you don't know us. And he listens to her and lets them go by. And Daemon kind of, walks up beside her and you liked that, didn't you? So like they're playing this game of her stealing, and she's like, who knows when I'm going to have a taste of freedom again. So she's out there just running wild, really, from after being stuck in this.
Which again, that's what solidified the whole Princess Jasmine comparison to me, because it was very reminiscent of the whole Aladdin scene.
Yep. And then we go back to Alicent, and one of her maids comes in and says, the king requests your presence. And like, you can only imagine what the hell the king wants in the middle of the night, like that late.
Maybe he just wants to have a chat.
Yeah. All right. And Alicent's just kind of like, it's very late. But then this is where this episode gets weird. Like, really just, and if you go back to the last episode, and it just feels like HBO does a time clock on how much nudity they have in every episode. And in the last episode, there wasn't much. So they had to get it all in this episode. Like they had to hit this quota. So Daemon basically takes Rhaenyra to a strip club, a brothel. And you have, all these girls and even guys dancing, and they just keep going through this. You cut back.
No, but what I thought was interesting is as they walk in, he removes his cloak and he pulls off her hat, and if anyone in there would know who they are.
He hasn't done that yet. He hasn't done that yet. So they're watching a show first. So this is definitely like they're watching, like they're in a strip club, and they still have all of her hat on. They don't recognize, and she's drinking, and he still has his cloak up at this point. Well, Daemon doesn't, but she does.
Yeah.
She still has her hat on. You cut back to the king, and we find out the king just wanted sex. Surprise, surprise. And Alicent's just laying there like, okay.
Dead fish.
Is this dead fish? I'm not interested. And the king has lesions on his back, and it's just like this old man taking advantage of this girl. And there's no reason for him to need another heir at all, and he could go hire whoever the hell he wants to come in to pleasure him, but he's doing this to Alicent over and over again, and she's just, I'm just here, I'm trapped, there's nothing I can do. Where you cut back to Rhaenyra, who is free with her brother. You're getting
her uncle.
Her uncle.
Yeah. You're
getting these juxtapositions between the two of Alicent being completely trapped, with the king, sexually, everything that you have there. And now you have Rhaenyra, who is free with her uncle, experiencing this in a completely different way. So then they kind of leave this show and they go down into, like the bowels of the pleasure house. And that's when he removes her hat. And everyone starts to recognize that it's the queen down here. And
the princess.
The princess. So, and Rhaenyra is getting excited about this because you see her smiling. She's interested as she's walking through. She hasn't seen this before, and like everybody's naked. They're all having sex. And just even more weirdness starts to take place as, of course, you had your gay guy scene that was in there. You had to have that. Daemon starts to explain to her, like, this is where people come and take what they want. And it's pleasurable for both the females and the males. Different to what Rhaenyra sees it as like sex is just something someone does for an heir.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about this episode, it was actually directed by a female. I can't think of her name right off the top, but the juxtaposition between the king and Alicent, where Alicent is just there, and this weird thing that we're going to get into of basically her uncle and Rhaenyra having this kissing each other, having this weird moment in this brothel where they're about to get it on. Pretty much. We're about to have our first incest in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Now, I wanted to go back. I kind of called this in their first meeting.
You did, yeah.
Where I was like, there's something weird between these two. But at the end of the day, Rhaenyra, I don't think Daemon was expecting Rhaenyra's reaction to it, where she got into it. And right at the end, Daemon cannot have sex with her. He pulls away.
It's like he can't. It's like he can't do it because she's too into it. He can't
do it. He can't do it. And I think at the end of the day, he just has that, like, Daemon has some form of morals here and doesn't have sex with her in this brothel. And he basically just leaves her. It was one of those things where you can see him struggling with it. He bangs next to the wall next to her head and just walks away from her. And she's left basically shirt open, pants down in the middle of this place, and Daemon's gone. Completely gone, and everyone recognizes her. And as she leaves, this little kid notices who it is and starts following her.
Yeah.
We then cut back to Alicent, who obviously was not happy with just being there with the king and having sex with the king, who's now asleep. And I'm like, can someone take care of the rat infestation that's in their room?
Yeah.
Like, there's this rat that's just like right above her bed that she's staring at. I'm like, someone needs to take care of that. It's the king, for goodness sake. Like, why is there a rat in his room? So then Ser Criston Cole has like the most confused, bewildered look on his face.
Yeah, because the princess
Rhaenyra
just walks right
past him again.
It goes
to her room, and he's like, "Hold on, wait a minute. You were just in here."
She doesn't have any pants on.
She has no pants on. So then he's like, "Did somebody hurt you? Do I need to alert the king's guard?" And Rhaenyra's like, "No, you don't need to do that." And she is
She opens the door and lets him in.
She opens the door and lets him in and steals his helmet. And Rhaenyra's in a very girlish, playful mood because Daemon just got her riled up and walked away. And Ser Criston Cole seems to be the next closest thing that Rhaenyra can get her hands on.
Yeah, and she's not speaking.
And she's not speaking at all.
But she's smiling the whole time.
She's smiling at him and obviously wants him. And you see the turmoil in Criston Cole's face because as a White Cloak, he has sworn to never take a woman, never to do any of have sex again. It's kind of like going to the wall. You know, he takes that oath, and banging the princess is one of the things you probably don't want to do if you're her guard. But it seems like they have this relationship and Criston Cole can't help himself. So this very long, drawn out scene that I did not think needed to be.
They drove this out.
Minutes it was.
Her piece by piece flirting and undressing him all at the same time.
And then, yeah, the whole scene was way too drawn out. So her and Criston Cole start to get it on, and here I'm wondering, was this Daemon's plan all along? Like, did he have an agenda, or did he really at the end just be like, my agenda was to have sex with her, at the end of the day because I'm in love with her, whatever it may be, or I'm trying to shear up my line to the crown through her. Or did he just really grow a conscience at the end and couldn't do it? Like, who knows? We'll get more details as we move on. So from the Christian Cole scene, we cut to our good boy, Otto, that seems to get his information from all over the place and have what we know as White Worm. So this little kid that we see that's following Rhaenyra and that was watching them go into the pleasure house is basically a spy for Otto, like at the end of the day. And we can only assume at this point he is telling Otto what happened. Like, hey, I saw the queen, or like I keep saying the queen, not the queen, the princess in a pleasure house with her uncle making out, and she ran out with no pants on. Like, you can kind of make an assumption there. So from that we cut to Daemon, who is where is Daemon at this point?
I don't really know where it is, but he's in one of the rooms.
It almost looks like a dungeon.
Yeah, but it looks like this place is being run by his former whore. Yeah,
so she left him after it seems like after being very upset with him saying she was pregnant and using her as bait. And again, I am really glad I had subtitles on because her accent I do not understand whatsoever. They really need to kill the accent on this character because it does not make any sense. So she tells Daemon like she's his protector. So I think he was getting into something rough and she pulled him out of whatever he was trying to start that night, got him here to sleep, brought him I guess like this hangover cure that he ends up dumping on the floor. Like, I don't need your protection. I don't need anything from a common whore. And she's like, I'm not that anymore. I run this establishment. This is mine. You can tell that like, and it almost like she runs the street rats.
Yeah.
Because this little kid comes in and gives her, money that he found. And then she's like, basically at the end leaving here. And she's like, you can pay for the room on your way out. Like, we are no longer together and you're going to pay your way. I know you have money. So from there, really wasn't much there. We go back to Otto, who, I mean,
for the first time, I actually felt kind of sorry for him because he's got to be this. He is about to be this messenger with horrible news, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Like I have to give this." I mean, what's he supposed to do? He is supposed to give the news.
I do 100% believe that Otto did not want to give this. No, let me rephrase that. Otto wants to give this news, but Otto doesn't want to be the one to give the news. So like, I definitely feel like there's a conundrum here, and I think in this scene, he's weighing whether or not he should tell somebody else to tell the king or he should do it himself.
See, I think you're conflicted with the fact that this news is good if you're Otto trying to play his game, but remember, everything he's done is calculated with the exact timing and the way to do it. This might be something in the works way down the line, but this is not the ideal time.
Well, no, but that's why I think he's debating on whether or not he should say something, or he should let this come organically through rumor mill and things like that.
Yeah.
So I give Otto credit for actually manning up here and kind of being the one that's going to bring what we can only think is the news that he gets from the street rat of where Rhaenyra was last night. So he goes to the king quarters super early. And he starts to tell the king about the exploits of his daughter. And how he doesn't want to be the one that has to tell him this. He even says, I didn't, I struggled with whether or not I was going to tell you this or not, but I'm going to. And I like how he says it. She engaged in behaviors unbecoming. Of a maiden. And he's trying to be as gentle as he can with this. And not piss the king off. But if you're a father, you're not going to be happy to hear this news, regardless of who it's coming through, about your daughter.
No. And you can see Alicent lurking in the back, too.
So one of the things that here is Otto doesn't know Alicent's in his chambers because they have separate chambers. But he had called her there that night. And then he's like trying to beat around the bush. She was seen with his brother. They were coupling, as he calls it. The king doesn't take this well, James.
No, I like
how the king take it.
I like how the king's like, stop beating around the bush. Like if you're gonna accuse my daughter of something,
just accuse her.
Then tell me exactly what you're saying. Stop saying, because he's already mentioned that she was there. She was doing something with Daemon. And he's like, just say what you're trying to, like, be plainly. Speak the blunt truth or get out of my fucking face.
Yeah, and then he doesn't believe it. He says it's a lie. And then he asks for whoever it was that told him this information. And, Otto being Otto is like, I'm not giving away my sources. Like, I have to keep these sources. And he's not wrong. If he puts one of them in front of the king and something happens to him, none of them are going to tell him any information anymore.
Yeah, but I was imagining this king who I don't find to be very ruthless. I was like, if he did bring this white worm up there, this kid, what's the king going to say? Like,
I don't know. I think the king would have had him killed just because he's saying something about his daughter. Like, it's a father and a daughter. It's a different story here.
Yeah, but he does transition really quickly to he's just pissed off that you're spying on my family and my daughter.
Yeah. So from there, that's when we see that Alicent is there. We see her kind of spying through there, and then the king turns to her, and Alicent just has this terrified look on her face. Like she is concerned in my mind for her friend.
Yeah. But I don't want to miss this because right at the end, the king gets super mad and he says to Otto, are you waiting your best chance to destroy my daughter's reputation? Are you so intent on getting your grandson on the throne that you would destroy my own reputation and my own family? And Otto just kind of looks like he
can't look the king in the eye.
He can't look the king in the eye. And that's what I'm saying. I do believe that Otto wants that in the long run. And this is where I was kind of like, in this particular situation, I don't think that's what Otto's necessarily trying to do. But I do think in the long, and that's why I think this doesn't work into Otto's very slow game, meticulous on how to do this.
Yeah, but
this doesn't work.
It doesn't. It's not playing to his normal cadence of manipulation.
Correct. So he has no control over it.
Well, he has very little control over how the king is going to react. And Otto has been very controlled on how he thinks the king is going to react to whatever situation it is. But I think he knows the longer he waits to tell the king this information, the less believable it's going to be.
Correct, yeah.
So it becomes a rumor, it becomes all of this, and it becomes very easy for the king to dismiss it. And for Rhaenyra, because basically he sees a way of taking out two birds with one stone. He can take out the princess and Daemon at the same time with this information.
Yeah.
So he knows he has to use it, but he also knows he's a father, and if he was going to get this information, how he would probably react. And he knows how bad the king reacts to things.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting all of that together as one. And we move on to Rhaenyra in her chambers, brushing her hair. Ser Criston Cole comes in, and he has his head down like he's disgraced himself. And Rhaenyra is still very happy, and she's like, come to me, like, hey, I know what we did last night. Let me have this little smirky smile on it and not realize that I just made you give up your oath in the middle of the night because I got horny because of my uncle. But Ser Criston Cole basically tells her that the queen wants to speak to her. And Rhaenyra's kind of like, uh-oh. I'm not sure what this is all about, but it can't be good.
Exactly.
Cut to, it seems like, is this like where you have difficult discussions now, is like the gods would?
Maybe, but this is also kind of always their place.
That's true. But it's like her and Daemon were here. Like, this seems to be like to go where you want to have a conversation where maybe there aren't any listening ears because it's supposedly a holy place.
Yeah.
You don't have all your servants around it or anything to listen. And the queen doesn't beat around the bush. She is like, what happened last night? Rhaenyra's like, I don't know what you mean. And she's like, what happened with your uncle? Explain to me. My father has some serious allegations on what's going on with you, and I need to know if this is true or not.
Yeah, and I like how Rhaenyra is like, what are you talking about? That I went out after dark, that I drank wine, and Alicent's like, no, that you fucked your uncle at a pleasure house.
No, she doesn't beat around the
She's
bush.
right into it. Like,
this girl is like, you are putting me in a terrible situation. You're putting yourself in a terrible situation. And it's the whole thing is Rhaenyra doesn't lie to her here. She doesn't tell her the whole truth, but she does answer the question the right way, as she did not fuck her uncle.
I mean, listen, I'm a little not 100% sure that they didn't play a little game called Just the Tip.
No, hey, she didn't fuck her uncle. He left. Ser Criston Cole, on the other hand, she's not bringing that up at all. But
that's all I could think about was Robin Hood Men in Tights, where they're Ace Ventura when nature calls, where they could like check that the woman has been defiled. So I was like, what if they check?
Yeah,
that's all I was going. I was like, oh, Criston Cole's about to die.
Yeah, I'm feeling for this guy, and I'm like, man, he is just just bad mistake gets you killed around here. One mistake, you're dead. This is the Game of Thrones that we're playing, and this is the House of the Dragon. So you're probably gonna be eaten dry a dragon or something like that, burned, heads cut off, Joffrey style, and put on a stake. But the biggest concern that they have here, which again, Game of Thrones, we got to kind of throw away our thought on like, no one's upset that there was incest or like.
Well, Alicent does kind of say like, well, I mean, we all know the Targaryens are into incest.
Exactly. So like they kind of put that in there, but they're more upset with the fact that she's not pure anymore to be married off.
Correct.
So she's no longer a virgin, and she can't be married off to anyone because no one's gonna take her because she's been used. Like, really? Like, but again, it's that time period, and
no one wants to play somebody else's saved game back in those days. No. Okay,
yeah. So, this lost my train of thought. I'm gonna have to use that from now on. That's a good one. But Alicent's super concerned with her. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, you can't get married, you can't move forward. And Rhaenyra swears on her mother that nothing happened, air quote this, with Daemon. So I don't think they played Just the Tip. I believe her. But no one asked about Ser Criston Cole.
Yeah.
And she's not telling anybody about that, because now all of a sudden she's like, I think Rhaenyra realizes the mistake that she made and how big this is. So yeah, that's not a good situation for them right now. And Alicent believes her. Alicent takes her for her word. So then the king calls Daemon, and I love this.
Daemon's so drunk off his ass walking into the keep.
So drunk. And I love how they throw him in the throne room, And Daemon just like lays there and takes a nap. He's not getting up. This guy is so hammered. He should have drinking that drink that the Alicent, I think her name was, or something like that. So the king is here, and he is not happy. And he's just like, my daughter, and Daemon doesn't say anything, and the king's like, you won't even deny it. And I love Daemon's response where he's like, you won't even deny it. He's like, he basically tells him, I want to get the exact line because I remember just like laughing at it when he said it. He's laying on the floor still too. Like he hasn't even gotten up. And he's like, I need to understand the charge before I can attempt to discredit it.
Because in fairness to him, he has no idea.
I have done so much bad stuff. Like, what the hell are you talking about right now? Because I'm so hungover, I don't remember. So can you tell me what it was so I can just discredit it afterwards? Because I don't remember. And they kind of go on with more banter of how he defiled the queen. But Daemon knows he didn't, but he doesn't deny any of it. What does Daemon do, James? What does Daemon do?
I mean, he basically throws it. He basically says to the king, it doesn't matter if he were to deny it or not. You believe what you want to believe. But he's also like, remember when we were young men, we went through all the brothels and the whores and all that. Like, it's not a big deal. And he's basically saying, like to Daemon's credit, he is kind of the guy that's like, well, if guys can do it, women should be able to do it too. That's just what he really believes. But the king does not have that mentality. He's like, no, women cannot do that.
But I do think it was interesting. His experience, better her first experience be with me than with a whore.
With some whore, and the king about chokes him out.
Yeah,
and it gets into that. It gets into that what you were saying. You've ruined her, and it's all about being that virgin because trying to marry her off.
It's not the fact that it's like uncle and niece here. It's about that I can't marry her off. And Daemon says, marry her to me. And I'll take her. And then we will unite this again. And it's like, shit, maybe Otto wasn't as crazy as he was when he said marry the two together. Because here's Daemon bringing up the exact same thing.
Yeah. And the king says you're already married. And he says, well, Aegon the Conqueror took a second wife, and the king loses it, basically says, you are no conqueror, you are a plague sent to destroy me.
Yeah.
That had me laughing.
He does not feel like Daemon is here to help him with pretty much anything. He is now 100% Daemon is just here to destroy me. Like Daemon is not on my side. He did not change from the beginning of this episode where the king was like, Daemon's here, he's bending the knee, he's my brother,
he's good to go.
Back. And Daemon turns into just Daemon. And he basically tells him how he's going to bring the house back to glory. And he basically tells him, like, you want my throne. Like,
yeah, it's not my daughter. It's not my daughter you lust after. It's my throne, isn't it? Now, which made me think, are you telling me if Daemon convinced you he really loved your daughter, you were cool? That would have been cool?
I don't know.
If the king thinks he wants to be with Rhaenyra because he actually wants to be with Rhaenyra and not because he's trying to get to the throne, the king would have been like, cool?
This is just kind of known for the Targaryens to have, like, the whole reason why Aegon, whatever it was, 5th or 6th, I don't remember, and Game of Thrones went crazy. Everyone was talking about the amount of incest that they had.
Yeah, true.
And you go back to Joffrey being as crazy as he was. That was an incest baby. So, like, it's not uncommon. Now, granted, the Game of Thrones incest was no one knew, but it seems like the Targaryens are very for it. And we'll get to this point like next, and I kind of want to like show why they still don't care about it. At the end of the day, King tells him, "Go home, back to your back to your wife.
To the Vale.
Back to the Vale. Get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you." The second time he's told him to go back to the Vale. And his brother's basically like, as you wish, my king. And he turns over and just lays down and takes a little nap in the throne room because he's still hungover. We move from that into a scene with Alicent and the king back in what it looks like, which is the king's chambers in the model room. I'm always going to call it in the model room. We know which room is Alicent's and which one is his based off of where the giant model is. So they're talking about it. And basically, it proves that Alicent believes Rhaenyra and what happened, but he had just talked to his brother, and his brother didn't deny it. So Alicent is bringing up the fact of like, why would Rhaenyra lie to me? What does she have to gain? And then the king's like, why would my brother lie to me? Like, what does he have to gain from it? And her response is basically to destroy you, to bring you down, would be why Daemon would do something like that. And I 100% believe Alicent is just as smart as her dad when it comes to playing this game, because she's spot on. Daemon's whole process here was not because he loved Rhaenyra and wanted to take her out. It was to discredit her and try to do this marriage thing, which I think he thought on his feet here, or discredit her so much to the point to where he's going to name somebody else and not Rhaenyra. And I think Daemon really does believe he could probably win in a fight, which means I don't believe Daemon and Corlys aren't still together and aren't still part in a pact there. I think Daemon knows what's going on, and he's trying to drive a wedge in here.
Yeah.
Knowing that his brother is not going to do anything to him. But Alicent picks up on it real quick. And she basically says, I believe her. She's defending her friend here. And unfortunately, her friend did not tell her the whole truth, just the truth she asked for. Which is smart. In this time period, you answer the questions you're asked. You don't give more information about it. And I believe she was protecting Christian Cole by not saying anything else either, because that would have been bad.
Yeah.
So then she gets kind of brought to her father's chambers, and we're about to have I would feel like a conversation that no father and daughter wants to have. But it goes a little differently than I was expecting. When you walk in, basically he has that dagger that he has all the time with him, sitting in the fire heating up. And when you heat it up, it looks like words are put on it. And it's the Song of Ice and Fire. It's like the Will of Aegon that he's reading from that.
And again, a reminder, this is the dagger.
Yeah, this is the dagger that Arya Stark uses to kill the king.
Night King, I think.
Night King, yeah. With this conversation, he still doesn't ask Rhaenyra her point of like what happened, because in his mind it doesn't matter what happened, only perception. And yeah, I agree with him.
I do agree with him here in their position, and he basically is trying to explain to her it doesn't matter what the actual truth is, it matters what everyone in the realm is going to believe. Perception is more powerful than the truth in their line.
Yep. And this is where he lays down the law on her, and he's like, you know what? Because of this, you're gonna marry the sea snake. Like you're marrying
the son of the
sea snake.
Yeah. To which I will be honest, to which I thought, at least that guy seems nice and honorable, and
he's a dragon rider.
Yeah. And of all things that we've seen being courted to her, I was like, he's still probably at the top, should probably be at the top of the list.
But here's the thing that is so funny about Game of Thrones is like, you just said that of like, yeah, it makes sense like for him to marry. It's her cousin.
Oh yeah,
No
I
one's
understand.
like,
Yeah,
it's
no,
still
I understand that.
incest.
Yes, no, I get.
It's still the same
I
kind
have
of
to
incest
accept
of Game
the
of Thrones.
period
It's
that
like,
we're in.
we're accepting the period. So, but it's so easy to accept like those two because it feels like they're separated, but it's not. It's the same family line. It's the same bloodline
Yeah.
that they're
But
intertwining.
the
over
king
and over
says
again.
it'll unite the two most powerful houses in the realm, and I love and I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but I love her immediate response to he talks about the combined strength of the shared dragons and the navel. No one would dare stand against us. And he said, the House of Dragon will stand as one for a further generation. And her immediate response is, and what will you do about the vulture who perches upon your throne?
Yeah. She
And I thought Ender's probably so excited about this
I
now.
I was, and I think she sees it and she knows what's there. The king cannot, but
Because he's even like,
can-
what vulture? What are you talking about?
yeah, Otto. She's talking about Otto, like Otto, and she basically said, like, for anyone to know I did this, he had to have someone following me. Like, regardless of what you believe and what you don't believe, he's been having someone follow me to bring me down and ruin me this whole time. And he's like, you speak of the conqueror's vision. You need strength and unity across the realm. But how can that be accomplished when your most trusted advisor is so self-interested?
Now here,
the king tries to defend
I
him.
like his defense because it is true. And I was like, oh, maybe the king's not as stupid as you think he is. Because what does he say, Ender?
He basically says all councils in the past are of self-interested men. My everyone on my council is self-interested. Like that's just how this game is played. It's unavoidable. And she basically says, I disagree that it's unavoidable. And she says to him, I will do my duty as heir and wed Ser Laenor. But, father, you must do your duty as king. And then I'm like, boom, she nailed it.
She's like, I'll do this as long as you get rid of your hand.
Yep. Well, she doesn't say get rid of him, but she implies that's his duty as the king. So then Otto is in the small council room and the king is there and the king is just like 5 days. I'm like, I totally thought he was gonna be like, you have 5 days to get out of the kingdom. Like, that's where I thought
I
this
was like,
going.
wow. I was like, wow, they had a 2 weeks notice thing back then too.
Yeah. I was like, oh, you have 5 days to get out. You're fired. Let me have this. Like, that's totally what I thought it was. Here's your severance package. Moving right along. You need to go home. But he tells this story about, I didn't really catch who exactly it was, but was it his father?
I think maybe he had an older brother.
He said, my father, like, he was like, my father, Jaehaerys named a great royal hunt. And he goes in this story about Balon the Brave. So, like, Balon the Brave was the hand of the king at the time, or named hand of the king for 5 days.
Yeah, his father, because it was the king's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he died in 5 days of a burst belly, that they would say. So I'm assuming someone poisoned him to like burst your stomach. And he's like, the gods have a dark wit, and Otto, I think, feeling like doesn't really know why he's here. I don't think Otto has caught on 100%, but then when they start talking about the original hand of the king, Balon, I think Otto catches on.
Because he was like, you only became hand of the king because my father died.
Because he died. And you went from a common nobody to the second most powerful person in the realm, basically in 5 days. And
but then he compliments him.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he says, you taught me how to be king.
I think he truly believes in him, but before and now, he also realizes, and he brings into light of how perfectly timed his relationship with Alicent started.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden he can see. It's like the king actually woke up and knows that he did all this.
Yeah, that he has been playing this game, this calculated game, and basically tells Otto, I believe in you. I trusted you. You were a great hand, but your judgment is flawed now. And you have failed as my servant. And he said, you're faithful servant, but you're failed now. You do not have the judgment that I need in order to move forward. The king walks up to him and removes the hand of the king's symbol and basically tells him the realm has no place, cannot repay the debt to you that you were, but I cannot trust your judgment anymore. And he fires the hand of the king. And that was where I was like, yeah, all right. Now we're getting somewhere. But Otto's not stupid. And Otto has relationships and knows things that the king doesn't know.
Yeah.
So it's not the last we see of him. He's not just going to walk away. And he still has his daughter there. And I immediately, right after I was so happy with this, I immediately thought of Alicent and like, oh shit, we're kind of going to have this Sansa situation again, where you have the hand of the king that gets, basically killed. And this girl is stuck with a father that is no longer trusted, and like the realm starts to hate, and they're going to hate her for no reason. Like she's going to be in a bad situation moving forward. We get to the last scene. I expected it to end there, but we get one more scene, which
it's really confused. I can't decide what I think here.
Yeah, neither can I. But the scene basically is the Maester coming into Rhaenyra's room and basically bringing her the medieval version of the day after pill. Like we could go ahead and get rid of anything that's not supposed to be in there. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, if she drinks this potion, who brought her this potion? Like my mind, like Otto's trying to kill her.
Yeah, I was like I ain't drinking that. What's wrong?
Yeah. But if she does drink it, she's admitting to basically the sex that she said she didn't happen with Daemon, because she hasn't told anybody about Christian Cole. But if she does get pregnant before this marriage goes through,
they're going to think that it's Daemon's.
They're going to think that it's Daemon's. So she's in a really weird situation right now of not being able to, not having a clear and easy decision on what to do right now. And it fades to black, and that's the end of the episode. Like I don't know how to take the end. I kind of wish they ended with Otto. I'm not sure how to take this scene with her and what the real purpose was behind that, other than saying, "Who is someone trying to kill me?" Like what is this whole thing around here? Is she going to take it? Is she not? Is she pregnant? Is she not? And maybe that was the whole thing of like reminding you that she did have sex with somebody and she could be pregnant. And that was the reminder here, but I don't know. We'll see. Overall, interesting episode. Like,
I think it's like I said, I think
expecting.
it sets the stage for what's to really explode in this. And you got to remember, there's only 6 episodes left. What's 10 episode seasons?
And supposedly we're gonna get a bigger time jump soon, because we got to get the new actress in here for Millie Alcott's character. So we're gonna see a time jump. So maybe something's going to happen in the next episode. I don't know if it wasn't the episode I was expecting, but I do think it was the episode we needed. I think HBO could have backtracked a little bit on their sex scenes. We didn't need as much or as long as they had here, but they were making up for the episode last of not having any, I guess. So in this next episode, I bet we're going to get a lot of killing and death, because we didn't get a lot of that in this episode. So that's kind of how they balance it out with House of the Dragon. So thank you, everybody. I know these podcasts go long; they're longer than the episode, but we like to get in depth with our breakdowns and our thoughts behind it because we do love the show. Again, thank you, everybody that is watching and listening. You can watch us at I am losing the train of thought. Last Choice TV Reviews on YouTube. You can watch the podcast, the video, and if you want anywhere that there are podcasts out there, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all of them.
It's out there. Anywhere you get your podcast.
Anywhere you get those podcasts, you can listen to. Please keep downloading. We have ranked for the first time. I think this is only our second podcast that's ever been ranked.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening. This has been episode 4 of House of the Dragons. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, night, evening, whatever time it is. We're out.